Done this before, so don't hold me to it.
Alright, do we get the lights?
Sure. Alright, come on. It always has to come up with a technical difficulty, right? Go. Alright. So, hi.
Hello.
I'm Kaysha. That's my husband, Kevin.
Hey.
Sitting right there. Okay. So Andrew just called me and told me to come up here and teach you guys how to do some basic 3D modeling. So there are a ton of different engines you can use. The one most students use is either Blender or Maya. Both of them are great. I personally use Maya because that's what they taught me at the U. Other schools can teach you like Blender. Wait, there we go. Okay, so this is the interface of Maya. It can look intimidating, but once you get the hang of it, it's not too bad. So there are a ton of different things that you can do in here. Obviously, like if I wanted to create a cube, you could sit there, pull it up, and then you can scale it up or down. You can move it, rotate it, and then you can also delete it and duplicate it and all that fun stuff. It's kind of very basic. So this area right here where it's like curves, poly, sculpting, rigging, all this area, it's called your shelf. And pretty much there's two ways that people do it. They either use hotkeys or shelf. You can make your own custom shelf over here. Obviously I use hotkeys because my shelf is empty. But so let's see. Some of the hotkeys that you use would be WER, which is W would be to move an object. So I bring in an object. R is to scale it. And so if you click on the middle scale, it'll go universal scale. And then these side ones either do X, Y, or Z. If you ever get lost in the UI where you're at, down there is a little diagram that will tell you. I'm not used to doing it on a Mac because my computer at work is a piece of this computer. So down here, so it's Y, X, Z, which is really helpful if you have to set up a scene using a camera, because I have more than once modeled everything upside down and then put it in the game engine and had to go back and flip it all over. So it's helpful if you ever get lost in the engine.
Well, what game engine do you typically use?
Right now I'm using Unity, but artists tend to use Unreal. They tend to like Unreal more. It's a lot better for like materials and textures. Unity is just kind of flat, and Unity has flat lighting where Unreal doesn't, so it can really showcase your art. So a lot of artists prefer Unreal, but for ease, if you're just doing like a very quick like tablet game, Unity is the way to go. But, so
Unity is what?
Unity is the way to go if you're doing just a quick tablet game. So there's that. All these up here are obviously your different things you can do. So these three are things you'll do to edit your mesh. I'm just doing this in the back. Okay, so these three things are things you can do to edit, or four, sorry. These are edit your mesh, so if you have two separate objects, you can combine and separate. So if
What's a mesh?
So your mesh is your object. So this would be considered a mesh.
It's a big object.
It is a very big object.
So this is meant for like characters, buildings, anything you're gonna develop and put inside of the game, essentially.
Yeah. So.
Now, can you animate within Muse?
You can animate in here. So down here is your timeline for animation. If you're an animator, you use this a lot. If you're me and you're not an animator, you don't use it that often.
How is it easy to animate in Maya, or is it like hard and time consuming, or?
It can be easy and it can be extremely difficult. It depends on what you're doing. If you're putting a skeleton in a character where you're rigging the joints, it gets a little bit more complicated. So when you rig a character, you're putting in the bends. So you have a bend in the wrist and a bend in the elbow and then a bend in the shoulder, and you make a skeleton inside your character.
Can you import mocaps
You can import, well, in Maya you can't. There's actually
you
a
can't.
separate program
Oh, okay.
that you import that into. But motion capture, depending on how your character's rigged, can help you, or it can be just more cleanup work
Okay.
for you. So down here is where you would put in, this is where your keyframing is, so this is your timeline. You can play it, and it will run through. Obviously there's nothing in there. Let's go back to 100. So if I wanted to stick this in here, so I could keyframe this, move it to 19, and then keyframe it there. That's just very basic.
Wait, so how do you add in the keyframe?
So keyframe, I use the hotkey S, or you can right click on the frame you want and put in a key right there, convert it to a key. But S is the hotkey for adding in keyframes.
So you just like scroll out and then
And then
hit
this
S,
helps you, this, so where is it? There's, so you can either zoom in if you're doing something that you need to have every 5 frames. You can zoom in there and it will tell you, or you can zoom it all the way out and you can go up as high as you need keyframes. So if I needed 2,000 keyframes, I'd make a 2,000 keyframe time bar.
Oh, cool.
So this is your maximum. So this is your absolute maximum number. And then this, say I only wanted to work on from keys 1 to 150. It only brings me to key 1 to 150. But I still have 2,000 keyframes. Or if I wanted my minimum, so my minimum was but I wanted to be at 50 for my minimum. So I'm now in between 50 and 150. So that is how you do animation and keyframing. A very important tip, like this is something that's very nitpicky, but this is called your time slider. So if you're going to animate your playback speed, you want it to be in real time. If it's not in real time, it's going to go like, it's going to play each frame as a frame and not as a whole, and so it'll go really, really fast. So if I do real time, and then move the keyframe over.
Wait, so you place it, hit S, move it to the next spot, then hit S.
You
Okay.
move it to the next spot, you animate it, you hit S.
Okay.
And it'll give it the motion of like walking or talking or anything like that.
So then it just tweens it, right? It puts all the frames in between.
Yep.
Keyframes. Okay.
So that's just very basic animations that you can do. You can also rig your character. Right here, there's an animation here that will show you all the things you can do. There's like physics built into it and everything. This is a massive program. So if you're just an animator, you will use it just for animation. If you're just a modeler like me, you will use it just for modeling. But everyone kind of learns the basics of each, just because there are certain things, especially like effects, there are certain things that if you're making a tablecloth, it's easier to animate it to make it than it is to actually build it. But there's that. You guys want to know anything else about animation?
Do you have a character that you can pull up and kind of demonstrate putting a skeleton
I do not.
What?
I do not. I have a base model character, but it's not ready to be rigged at all.
Let's see.
Alright, let's open it up. Here's a bouncing ball. This is just a very basic. This is an animation I've done before.
There's so much stuff on the screen.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Okay, this is a Mac. So if you play it, it's in real time, right? Okay, so this is what it looks like if you play every frame. So it's super quick, and then in real time, should be slower. So that's just a basic ball bouncing animation. If you're doing animation, that is the first thing anyone will have you do, is make a ball bounce against and have it collide against a different object.
But that was the physics doing the work there, or did you?
No, I keyframed that.
Oh, okay.
So, where is it?
That probably took a long time to do too, didn't it?
Yes, it did. That's the thing. The first thing they'll have you do is just, so.
But it only takes a long time the first time.
Yeah, the first time you do something, it's going to take forever. And then the second time you do it, you'll kind of have a better idea of how to approach it. That's the difference. So I'm currently working on this guy right here.
Who's that guy?
It is a character I'm working on, but I'm not working on him for animation because he's just going to be in the background. So he's not going to be moving at all. So if it's like that, I'm not going to model for animating. But if it's a character that I need to model for animating, then you would model him. So currently his model, I have it on here.
Wow.
Watch out, rock guy. There's another rock guy behind you.
Some balls are gonna fall on your head.
Yeah, can you make it so the balls like fall on his head?
It just falls straight through him.
Yeah.
They're not animated.
Put it in the
But
game.
currently he looks like that. So pretty much this is a block out, which is the best thing you can do when you first model. This button right here will just show you the topology on him, and it makes it easier to see because grams is really hard to see.
And there's a lot of pieces to put that together.
So the reason I did him this way is because he is made out of stone, and if you look at him, he doesn't look like one piece.
Right.
He looks like a bunch of separate pieces. So you can see like that does not look like it's connected, it just looks like it's standing on top of. So how I modeled him was the same way, but as you can see, because he's not meant to be animated, he is just exactly in the position of the image, except for the back. The back you kind of have to just imagine, wing it, because the majority of your concept art will be in 3/4. He is technically in 3/4 frame, even though he looks head on, but if you look at him from the side, you can tell that he's rotated on his shoulders right there. So he's technically in 3/4. But yeah, so the best thing you can do when modeling a character is begin by blocking him out. If you don't block him out and you try and go in for all the fun detail, you're going to run into a ton of problems, mainly with your topology. And topology is these pieces. So all these faces, so here are your faces. You can also do edges and vertices. And how you get to that is you just right click a mouse. It'll bring up this menu. And then object mode is to select the object as a whole. So where you could go wrong if you try and add detail in your topology, a lot of, especially video games, they like low topology. Most video games, if you're doing a character, don't want you to go over 15,000 polygons, which is very, very low. It's like I've done pieces, this guy, I did him, and he was probably 10 million polygons. But the assignment was to do a high poly model. So that would be why he was so large.
So why would you do a lower poly?
So a lower poly object or character or whatever, the reason they do it is because when you play a game, it's a live render. And with like film or anything that's already been pre-rendered and you're just watching it back and forth, it's not going to slow down the production of it at all. Where with a game, it's a live render. So if you have something that has 10 million polygons on it, it's going to take a minute for the RAM speed and whoever's computer to catch up. So if they say we want a high poly, so a lot of companies will say we want high poly detail on a low poly model. So the reason they're saying that is because what they want is they want something that's going to be able to look good in the game, but be able to run the game quickly. So right now he's at, this is supposed to be a high poly, but I have him as a low poly right now. Let's find
A lot of topology.
topology.
Yeah, a lot of it can be like just simulated from like skins, inch, color, a certain way, right?
Yeah, so topology in a picture would be considered like a pixel. A pixel would be considered part of a topology's picture. In 3D modeling, it's considered the faces that you see. So a good way to model would be to see, look at your character, and if he looks chunky like this, you'll model him chunky, or if it's meant to be pieces of metal, you'll do it in pieces, which is what I did with this guy as well. So
That's
it's
impressive.
in pieces. So let's see. So the best way to model, okay. The best way to model would be everyone starts out with a snowman.
Do you want us to follow along with this?
If you have mine, you can follow along.
You guys got it downloaded?
Did have mine, so laptop's cracked out.
I couldn't get mine to get downloaded.
What?
Yeah, it was like giving me some weird things. They're like, oh, you can't do it because currently you just can't do it and wait for like 30 minutes, and that was like 30 minutes ago.
It took me like 10 minutes to download.
It depends on your machine. Sometimes as I hard time on PCs, it tends to run a little bit smoother on Mac.
Give me a second. Let me try and download it. Maybe I need to check it on my computer.
So, first thing anyone ever starts out with is a snowman. So we'll just grab that as a huge snowman. Grab something smaller. Okay, so when you look at modeling the snowman, you pretty much look at the basic shapes that you see. So as you can tell, there are 3 circles for the body. There's 2 circles for the eyes and 3 circles for the button. For the hat, that can be a little bit tricky, but if you look at it, it mainly looks like a cylinder with a little tail out on the bottom. For the arms, those can be cylinders, those can be cubes, more or less what you see. And then for the nose, it's obviously going to be a pyramid because it's a carrot. You can model the scarf if you want to, but you do not have to. So when you open Maya, you'll see this come up. It'll have your grid, and the center of the grid is absolute 0, and your object will always come in on absolute 0. If you come over, so if I bring in my circle, you'll see everything is zeroed out except for the scale, because the scale is going to be 1.
Okay.
So
How do you
How
zoom
do-
in? Just
So to zoom in, it's Alt on a PC and it's Option on a Mac. You just click that and you click the right mouse.
So is the grid by like square inch or square foot,
I
square
believe
meter?
this one's square centimeter.
Autodesk.
You can change the width of your grid to be like feet, inches. I believe mine's on centimeters. I believe default is centimeters. Or it might be inches.
That way you don't build a half-sized.
Yeah, I
bed
did
or
not know
something.
that when I first built my first environment and I took it into the game and it was like this big, which was super fun. Okay, so how you bring in an object is you can go to your polygons right here and click on your sphere, and that will just drop it in on 0, 0, 0. Or some of them will have you draw it into the scene. Either way, it'll get it in. And then it's not going to show it, is it? You can do Shift, right click, and it will bring in, it'll give you the option to do polycylinder. I don't see a sphere though. But if you do that, it'll drop in as well.
just follow that whole thing.
Okay, so we've got our circle. So if you look at our concept,
You download it.
he kind of looks a little bit more oval than he does circle.